Hey everyone, I hope you can see and hear me. Let me check. Let me also check with the colleagues if the tech is all right. Just a little bit. Yeah, in the meantime, welcome from the fairly sunny Debrecen. Let's wait a little bit. Uh, let you guys take a break after the previous presentation by Peter. Okay, everything should be smooth. Very nice. All right, so let's kick this off. Welcome everyone to the second presentation of Z-Nights 2020. For this presentation, in the next 30 minutes, I will guide you through a little pet project of mine, which I've been developing for 2 years. And I will tell you about the motivation, how it came to life, what it can do, and what is in store for it in the future. And in general, how you can build your portfolio on GitHub if you are an aspiring software engineer or software testing engineer, and what benefits can it bring for you and your career. All right. So yeah, as I mentioned, there will be a little bit of introduction from me, and then we will look at the, well, let's say the root cause of why I started this journey, and then some implementation details. I will tell you about a couple of challenges I faced, and then we will dive a little bit into testing aspects. And by testing aspects, I mean uh, bringing back the previous presentation, the lower level of the testing pyramid, like unit testing and component integration testing. And then a little bit of a couple of sentences about continuous integration, continuous development, and how you can achieve all this quite easily with GitHub Actions, which is a fairly new feature of the platform. And then some benefits, some statistics, and I will tell you about what I want to improve upon this command line tool that I've been working on for 2 years. And then a little bit of Q&A for you guys. But yeah, in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to answer away either on YouTube in the chat section, or you can also find a chat section on the Community Z site itself. So yeah, my name is Attila Gyongyosi. I've been a software engineer for EPAM Debrecen since 2013. I started out as a Java developer back in the day, but yeah, I took a little turn halfway between, and I am now a JavaScript engineer, and then also leading a team of JavaScript and, well, TypeScript developers. I also do a little bit of interviewing new candidates for the office. And yeah, during the last half year, I try to be a bit of an aspiring community organizer, bringing together the UI developers of the Debrecen office a little bit closer. If you are in Debrecen, if you live here or you are traveling here, I'm always up for a beer. I am glad to talk about software engineering, music, or the weather, or software engineering the music with weather. And you can also find me on GitHub, on LinkedIn, on Twitter also. Yeah, so let's talk about a little bit of my motivation, why I started to implement a little bit of a command line tool, a Node.js command line tool in the first place. So yeah, this is all started with static analysis. So the root cause lies in a problem with static analysis. And yeah, what is static analysis? This is basically the process of checking certain aspects and certain rules or certain criteria in your source code or any other source asset of your project without actually executing this software itself, because that is dynamic analysis. There are a myriad of tools for this to achieve this, and you can check all kinds of different aspects of your project. This also depends on what kind of project you are working on, whether it be a web application or a mobile application, an embedded system. You can do a lot with static analysis, and it can help you to catch early issues, early bugs, or issues with your code design. In the JavaScript ecosystem, if you are familiar with it, these are usually called linters. And yeah, just a side note, the word comes from the lint, which is a little leftover fiber or fluff in your clothing. So yeah, you can find these tools in every ecosystem, basically. A little bit of background story for me. In 2017, I joined a new project as a software engineer, a JavaScript software engineer. This was basically the point where I officially turned from Java engineer to JavaScript engineer. And I joined the project in a very interesting time, because we started to think about migrating a fairly legacy project to a new technology stack to be, a bit more sustainable, a bit more scalable, a bit more robust. So the original stack included an in-house framework, which basically encapsulated certain aspects of Node.js and AngularJS in a centralized way. And we were thinking about, moving to TypeScript, trying out Angular 2, this kind of stuff, integrating Webpack as a means of bundling this application. So that was very interesting. And we had a lot of discussions, a lot of brainstorming on how to do that, and a lot of business alignment as well. And so by the end of 2017, we actually basically kickstarted this whole endeavor. And right from the get-go, we realized that static analysis will play a crucial part in a couple of aspects of the project. One of this, of course, is maintaining a sound code quality. And that would mean that we would check the TypeScript code, we would check the styles, which were SCSS files with certain rules. We will also checking the HTML structure. This was more like coding style than code design rules. We also had stuff like a maximum cyclomatic complexity, maximum lines of code in a source file. These kind of stuff are all configured. We were using TS-lint and style-lint and HTML linter, all wired into our build system, basically. So these were all automatically executed and evaluated, and if anything was failing, then it would stop the build process. And it was all nice and dandy, basically, but we realized quite early on that with all these rules and all these conventions, something was missing. And this something was basically, developers started naming their source files in very different ways. And the code base of this migration started to look like a little bit of, spaghetti regarding the file system. So the code was all fine and checked and kept in quality, but we had very different naming conventions, basically varied developer to developer. And we were thinking about, okay, it would be nice if there was a way to, have this as a convention for the project for developers as well. So not just coding style, not just the HTML structure, but the shape of the file system would be consistent, at least naming convention wise, because you have all these different naming conventions like camel case, snake case, where you separate words with an underscore, um, all these different stuff. So I was thinking at this point, and I was starting to look for tools to achieve this problem. So this was actually the root problem. I wanted to have a naming convention, enforce a naming convention for directories and file names for our project. So what do you do when you have a new idea? This is probably also true for Peter and the tri-layer testing architecture. You try to check if anything came up with anyone came up with that idea before you. So I did a little bit of search. This was back in early 2018. I did a little bit of search and tried to find basically Node.js packages that would solve my problem. And I did find a couple. So the first one I found is a little something called ESLint plugin file names, and as the name suggests, it's an ESLint plugin. If you're not familiar, ESLint is basically the de facto standard linter for anything ECMAScript related. And there's a plugin for linting file names in a project. And it has its ups and downs, and it supports regular expressions, which is good because then you're not restricted by pre-built rules. You can define your own regular expression and basically have your own naming convention, whatever you want to do. On the other hand, it has some built-in support for stuff like kebab case, which is the naming convention when you separate words with a dash, or snake case, and that all works fine. But I soon realized that there are some cons to this library, namely that it needs ESLint because it's a plugin to ESLint. And back in 2018, TypeScript projects were linted with TSLint. In the meantime, so right now the ecosystem has changed, and the TSLint projects basically merged with ESLint itself. So right now this would not be that a big issue. But otherwise, it also brings in another dependency. So you either way, ESLint is required for your project. And then another shortcoming was that you can specify different rules for different folders, because that's something that we were looking into a little bit. That kind of flexibility, it was lacking with this stuff. And then I was also find something which is called fnlint, or I guess it was a short for file name lint, which is not a really good library. It was kind of abandoned on the 8 releases. It only supported built-in rules, and with one execution of this tool from the command line, you can only specify one folder to lint. So if you would have different rules for different folders, you would need to execute this tool 2 or 3 times or 4 times, wire it all together via a npm script or bash script or whatever. So that's not what I was looking for our project. And then I also stumbled upon a stuff called file name linter, which was actually a pretty good library. It was hosted on GitLab, not GitHub. it has a lot of very good features. It also supports regular expressions, so you can do whatever you want, basically. But one of the issues back in 2018 was one of the crucial features that I would need was not released yet. It was not even merged yet, and there was no sign of it ever being released, because the last release was like a year ago or a year and a half ago. I don't remember correctly, but a long time ago. I actually checked this up yesterday while preparing for this presentation, and I saw that it was indeed released. So in its current shape and form, it can be considered an alternative to what I built, which is, yeah, an interesting development. But anyway, so I looked around the Node.js package ecosystem and find these stuff, but something was always missing for me. So I was like, okay, I was actually looking for a pet project to start, anyways, and I wanted to build something that is, that is something that I can release and showcase for the community, and something that can be used by others, not just for my amusement. So this was a perfect opportunity. So I created a little library which I named path-linter. Probably not a very creative way, but name, but anyway, it does the trick. So yeah, in the summer of 2018, I started developing this, and the current technology stack is that it's still TypeScript 3. Of course, TypeScript 4 was released some time ago. It currently supports Node.js 12, or at least this is the version of Node.js that I am actually developing against. More on this later. I am using Jest for doing testing, both unit testing and integration testing. And for the bundling, I use a tool called Rollup. I'm not sure if you JavaScript guys are familiar with this. I started out with Webpack, but I realized that this is such a small project that all the robustness and the hassle of Webpack might be too big for this one. I actually tried out Parcel as well, but I found out that Rollup is in sometimes easier to configure, and also, at least in my case, a little bit faster as well. So yeah, and then I have ESLint, of course, for checking the code quality. I use my own set of ESLint rules, which is also available on my GitHub. I use commitlint, and I try to adhere to the conventional commit standards. Look it up if you're not familiar. That's really cool stuff. I'm using Husky, which is a tool that you can use to automate the configuration of your Git hooks, which is also can be beneficial. And in a very, very meta way, path-linter uses path-linter itself to, lint its file paths against a set of rules. The tool itself supports regular expressions, because that's something I really liked, and that gives you a certain flexibility, of course. And again, it's usually quite fast. It supports different linting rules for different directories of your projects. So you have that kind of flexibility as well. So far, I only built in a kebab case rule. So instead of specifying a lengthy regular expression, you can use a keyword to have this kebab case rule. It has a nice console output, gives you some information on the console. It can also be colorized. I really like this, fancy outputs on the console. Has different severity levels. So if you don't want to, if you still want a 0 exit code, you can set the severity level to warning. So it will not fail any processes if you wire this into a build pipeline. It is also operating system agnostic. which is a crucial point during development and also during testing, because since this library deals with file system paths, and we have these different path separators and different path structures between Unix systems and Windows, it needs to be operating system agnostic. And how I achieve this, I will talk about that in a bit. It also has zero dependency, so that's also cool, which is a good segue into one of the development issues or, well, decisions that I faced in the beginning, which is okay. How do I want to do this? Because yeah, one of the bane of Node.js packages is that they are usually chock full of dependencies. You bring in one little library into your project, and it brings 20 other transitive dependencies with it. Clutters up your node modules, even for stuff like padding strings, this kind of trivial stuff. So in the beginning, I was thinking about, okay, do I want to include other dependencies? And yeah, my decision was no. Let's keep it as lightweight as possible. And this has some pros and cons. Currently, it's so far so good. It has zero dependencies. Naturally, the downside of this is that certain aspects I would need to code myself instead of using a third-party library. For example, parsing the command line options that a user can supply, or colorizing the console output. These are stuff that there are existing packages to do this for you, and I could have used those, but I decided to not. These are fairly little pieces of code that I was basically happy to implement. So this was also a programming challenge for me to do this. Of course, so this is easy on your dependency tree, but will raise the size of your library a little bit. And it's another question is whether it is sustainable or not. That I will see in the future. The other challenge, of course, was during development is the very operating system and environment agnostic way to deal with passes. Because how it looks like is that you specify your linting rules based on regular expressions. And of course, you can write regular expressions that would match slashes and backslashes either way, or taking the drives for Windows into account or not. You can achieve that with regular expressions. That can be tricky, and I wanted to circumvent that a bit. So what I'm actually doing, or what the project is doing, you can check this on GitHub, of course. This is open source, as I mentioned. I'm normalizing the path information. So every file path that I iterate on is basically normalized to a way, so I detect what kind of operating system the tool is currently running on, what kind of path it is, and then shape it in a way that it's let's put it this way, it can be linted in a operating system agnostic way. So this was a very cool challenge. This, of course, a lot of regular expressions are involved in the background within the code for this, but that was a nice challenge for this library. And yeah, once you have your implementation, let me dial back a bit for the development. The heart of this, the heart of the tool is basically an asynchronous recursive visitor that iterates over your folders and basically visits all the files and executes the corresponding linting rules. This is basically implementation-wise. This is a TypeScript class You can find the file visitor class in the source code if you are interested. I do plan to have a couple of modifications on that one for the next milestone of the tool, but yeah. And of course, yeah, let's start. Let's start to talk about a little bit of testing, because of course implementation is all fine, but you need to make sure that everything is working as expected, and this has an even bigger emphasis when you are building something for the community. If you are building something that potentially anyone can use, then you are obligated to document this properly and test this properly, so others won't bomb you with bug reports. The main testing approach, of course, this is all relying to the testing, the standard testing pyramid. I have unit tests, as I mentioned. This is built with jest. Every unit test source file has a .spec, .ts extension and a dedicated jest configuration that just looks for these kind of files within the source code. It currently holds a 100% coverage, which I'm kind of proud of. You can see the actual report on the picture. For certain, so this is standard unit tests, right? So they adhere to the first principles. They are isolated from every stuff that is going on in the code base. One of the challenges here was to mock the platform specific stuff of Node.js. Because I'm in certain cases of the application, I am detecting the operating system and I am detecting the path separator of that operating system. This is happening through the OS module of Node.js, which is a built-in module. So I had to find a way to mock it, and yeah, fortunately, Jest provides me with the right tool set to do so. So that was an interesting part in unit test separation and isolation. I also have integration tests, which are, well, I assume these are more like end-to-end tests. They have their own specific source files and their own dedicated Jest configuration files. So I can execute unit tests and integration tests separately and have them evaluated and reported separately, which gives a nice overview of what's going on. It has a pretty good code coverage. So what it does basically is, so this is actually an end-to-end test, right? So you need to build the tool in the first place, and then as you would use it normally, you would spawn a child process, and the test suite would iterate over all kinds of scenarios with an actual running instance of the tool. And this is one approach that you can use. Another thing that I thought about as an improvement is to slice it up and have a function that I can call instead of executing the tool itself. And I see that I need to speak up a bit because I will be a bit over schedule. The test also relies on fixtures, which is basically a set of directories, version controlled with different kinds of file structures that the integration test can go over and check, basically. So this is a preset environment to check different end-to-end cases. Yeah, I also mentioned that this is operating system agnostic, and the way I check that it is indeed operating system agnostic is that I leverage something which is called a matrix testing strategy, and I will talk about it in a bit. So let's talk about automation and building the project and executing tests and automatically evaluating stuff. Yeah, so in the case of CI and CD, You can see all the definitions of these terms if you are not familiar. Path-linter currently is on the, let's say, the second step. So I have continuous delivery. I could release a new version by a press of a button, but for now, I don't have it end-to-end, so it won't roll out a new version automatically if I push a new code to master or whatever branch. I am using configuration as code, and this is something that you will encounter if you want to use GitHub Actions. This is a pattern where you would have your any kind of configuration part of your version control. And I use this for GitHub Actions. You can see the actual pipeline of mine here. And I highlighted the matrix strategy that I am using, which is a great way to specify different environments or different aspects that you want to have for your CI pipeline. In this particular case, I am executing my tests and builds against Ubuntu as a Linux distribution, Windows and Mac OS, and currently have Node.js 12, which can be extended to 10 or 14. And when I push a new code, the test suite will be executed for all these different environments and can give you a nice idea that nothing breaks anywhere. Yeah, really quickly, so this as a general, if you are a software engineer or a software testing engineer, or you're interested in IT in general, if you have a side project that can keep you, that's a good way to keep practicing coding, try out new technologies. It will keep you up to date with what's going on in your field of choosing, like the Java ecosystem or the JavaScript world. You can probably try out new things. For example, I haven't used GitHub Actions, and this was a good opportunity for me to try it out. This looks really nice. If you have a project like this is very nice if you put this on your resume and if you are trying to land a software engineering job. As I mentioned, I'm interviewing JavaScript candidates for the last 2 years, and I really like it if a candidate has a GitHub account or an actual project that he worked on. So I can check before the interview. It gives us a lot of conversation points, a broader picture for the interviewer. It can speed things up. It's really nice if you build your portfolio this way. Yeah, some statistics. As I mentioned, I started in June 2018. Speed-wise, and this is coming from our current EPAM project, it can lint 900 files in under 1.2 seconds, which is fairly cool. It is already used by 2 GitHub repositories, which is also very cool. I'm really proud of that. Some random guys found it on the internet and started using it. And I have a couple of open issues also, which I'm really proud of because they are, feature requests and issue reports that I can work on. Yeah, for the future, I plan to, try out new technologies, upgrading to Yarn 2, TypeScript 4, trying out ES-Build, which is a new bundler for JavaScript and TypeScript projects. Adding a couple of new features, make it available to be used programmatically, not just through the command line. I have a couple of ideas how to move forward with this one. And that is basically it. Sorry, I'm over the schedule a bit. If you have questions, you can find me on the Community Z portal under my talk. And I will do a quick check if there are questions right now. Okay, I don't see any questions. All right. So as I mentioned, feel free to ping me. You can find my contacts on my Community Z profile. If you have any questions, check out the stuff on GitHub. And yeah, sorry for being a bit over time. And see you next time, probably somewhere. Cheers.